Got it.
All right.
So I want to honor and introduce you to a colleague, and she and I have just connected within the last 6 months, and I have really grown to appreciate and acknowledge her skill and expertise. Sue Paulson is an author herself. Um, Her book is The Magnificent Misery: From Adversity to Ecstasy. And it's about her own personal journey through her near death experience, and then 2 additional bouts with cancer. So she's gone through some pretty rough times in her life. Her mission now is to help others create their own brand of heaven on earth. She now has her own app, and that's called The Magnificent Mentor. And, and she today has come to help us learn how to speak up, speak out, and be successful. So Sue, with that, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Diane. This is just an absolute pleasure for me to be here today to work with everybody. And well, I kind of call it play, actually. And I'm going to just work with some ideas and present them and get you kind of putting your thinking cap on that leads to it, your speaking cap, so that you're able to just enrich the experience that you could have with your own voice and get your message out. So writers, I find, tend to be a somewhat reticent lot. and I have heard more than one writer in my life say to me, "Oh, Sue, that's why I write, because I'm too afraid to talk. I don't want to be in front of a group. I don't want to speak out." And I get that because I've had that too, where I spent lots of years being invisible and letting other people speak, and that old childhood adage, don't speak until you're spoken to. And, well, at some point in our lives that no longer serves. So let me start with the why I think it's so important for each of us to speak up and speak out. Well, the most important reason is that you are unique on this planet. There is only one of you, and there's only one of you with your particular point of view. So even if you're saying information or wanting to say information that somebody else has already said, nobody's going to say it like you. I mean, let's face it, there are no new ideas out there. They're just ideas that are kind of repackaged and repurposed and so on. Well, what a tragedy it is to not hear other people's voices and to not hear your own voice. So others, I guess the thing is, if we don't speak up and speak out, we lose, and our audience loses, whoever we're talking to, whether we're talking to one other person or a whole crowd of people or whatever. The fact that we speak up makes a difference. And I guess when I look from the sort of typical public speaking arena, we tend to think of speaking as, the public speaking thing where you're at the podium and there's thousands of people in front of you and so on, which, let's face it, sends fear, chills, and terror into the hearts of all, because it does feel like dying for lots of people. And in fact, for some people, it's worse than dying. So on the scale of the 10 top fears that people mostly have, I think it's at least number 3 on the list. And so no wonder we avoid it, because of that intense fear. But of course, so much of that fear is not real. It's something that we kind of make up in our heads. We might feel like we're dying with our heart palpitating and our knees shaking and our bodies kind of quivering and vibrating just at the thought of being up in front of a group. But let's break it down a little bit and understand that public speaking is speaking to more than just you. If you're just speaking to yourself, that's private speaking, right? Everything else is public speaking. So, so it doesn't mean that, okay, public speaking, I have to be in front of a big group. It's just one other person, that's all. And the coolest thing about the way we connect with people these days is we label it heightened conversation. So it's just, so if you're speaking to one person, you'll speak at a certain volume, right? One-on-one. But if you're speaking to more than one, well, then you just kind of raise the level of the volume a little bit, the intensity of what you're doing, and so on, so that it's not, so that it just gets bigger as your audience gets bigger. That's all it is. It's pretty simple. And so we want to kind of look at the reality of that. So I want this to be as participative as possible. So I'm going to ask you a few questions as we go along and get your thoughts on some of these things and your understandings and where you're coming from and all this. But I wanted to start with the importance of us speaking up, because one person can make a huge difference. You already do that through your writing. And one of the things I've come to understand is that when you have a talent in one direction, so a writing talent, for example, pretty well guaranteed you have a speaking talent as well. It's just to develop that. It's just to branch out, because when you're in the creative field, all things are possible. I never understood that until I took a few painting lessons, and never in my life did I believe I could paint anything. And then I'm taking these lessons and my instructor says, well, you have some talent. And I'm, really? It was the biggest surprise to me. So it's just, you start with one thing and then you have the courage to try something else and it branches out. So now the other part of this, and we'll talk a little more later about this, is that each person, just as you have your own writing style, you will have your own speaking style. So, and that affects the way you pull your material together and how you talk about it. So that part is very much, when you understand yourself really well, that's very much a learned skill. It's something that you can just learn. Okay, this is how I like to do things. So some people will, if they're creating some kind of a talk, will, oh, hang on, I'm getting some feedback here. Let me put my headphones on and see if that will cut things out. Is it echoey, Diane?
It just started.
Okay, let me just.
Okay, is that better? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, that's good. That's better.
Oh, good. Thank you. I meant to put those on before. Sorry. All right. So I feel kind of like a co-pilot in the cockpit of a jet airplane. Oh, all these buttons to push. Yeah, pilot. There you go. All right. Oh, so where was I? Oh, so speaking style. In preparation for everyone's speaking style, each person is going to do that a little bit differently in the way they organize their thoughts and then the way they present them. And all styles are wonderful and all styles are important. So you get some people who are just naturally a little bit flamboyant and they're rah, ziz, boom, bah, and they're right up there at the front of the room. And maybe you're a quiet person and you think, I could never speak like that. One of the most powerful talks I ever listened to was a fellow who was very quiet in the way he presented his material, yet it came from the heart in such a way that I don't think there was a dry eye in the house when he told his story. I mean, it was just so moving and so poignant. And I'm going, wow, that's not your typical front of the room platform speaker. So it was delightful and a change. So don't think because you're not this ziz boom ba kind of person that you can't be effective as a speaker. You know what the audience wants? They want you. They want you.
Mhm.
Authentic, your personality, your stories. That's what they want, is you. They don't even necessarily care if you have a PowerPoint presentation. And believe me, I debated whether I would do, because I have a kind of a nice PowerPoint presentation for this that I've used, but I'm thinking, no, let's talk about it. Let's just, I'm not going to have the screen interfering with diagrams and so on. I can send you that later if you want it. So, but I thought we would just talk. So let me address probably the biggest elephant in the room when it comes to public speaking. And of course, that's the fear of it. So just think for a second on when you imagine yourself in front of an audience, what comes to mind to you in relation to fear? So what sorts of things? So think about physiologically, what happens in your body? What happens with your thought processes? So just whoever'd like to jump in, give me a little bit of feedback about what that's all about for you.
No, it's getting easier. My fear is usually based from why would anybody want to hear what I have to say? It's a confidence thing.
Sure. Oh yeah, like what would, why would they want to listen to me? Sure. Very common concern for people. Absolutely. Thank you, Mary. Who else?
Physiological things that accompany your nervousness, going to the washroom umpteen times before we go on.
Your bladder gets right on board and says, oh.
You are sweating buckets and big wet stains under your arms and that kind of thing. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, all of that can happen. Absolutely. Any others?
I think this forgetting your whole point of why you're there. You just draw a blank. You have a fear of, I know Barbara Streisand said she doesn't want to do concerts because she forgets her songs. So she stopped singing for a lot of years. So just forgetting your material.
Yep, absolutely. And that's a huge fear, and that drawing a blank and standing there and not being able to think. And of course, fear can just drive that right out of our heads. I was all organized, I practiced, I'm blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden what else? Okay, so anybody have a fear of being judged or criticized when you're at the front? Yeah. Okay, sure. Well, all of those fears seem, well, they are real because we feel them. Somehow we take them in and they're right there front and center, and it makes it difficult to move forward. So here's the first thing that's important to understand about your audience. Unless you go out of your way to deliberately insult or do something nasty to your audience, which is rare. There's the odd person is a little inflammatory at the front of the room, but if that's not your intention, is you're there to serve and deliver your message and so on, your audience is with you. First of all, they're so grateful it's you at the front of the room and not them. They're good. They're going, all right, I'm here in my chair and you're up there talking. I'm fine. So they're happy, right? And the other thing is they want you to succeed. Why? Well, number one, because they want to feel that they haven't wasted their valuable time by being in front of you. So they're cheering you on and they really want you to go for it. And are they concerned about any flubs or mistakes or anything that are made at the front of the room? No, they are not, because they recognize that that could happen to them too. And so, or maybe has already happened to them. So their audiences are very forgiving for the most part. And you might get the odd person who's the way they are. But the thing is, the bulk of your people, they want to learn from you. They want to hear your story. They want you to say what it is you say, and they want you. So I've seen some of the strangest things happen to people at the front of the room, and nobody cared in the audience. Like, it didn't matter to them. So somebody had cue cards. So my students would put notes on cue cards, and they'd forget to number them. And then one time, one student dropped them all on the floor. So nervous, dropped them all on the floor. And they're so embarrassed, right? But everybody just waited and said, you know, take your time. And of course, as the instructor, I'm saying, okay, now take a deep breath. And so, you know, take a moment to compose yourself and then carry on. Like, just the show goes on. So whatever happens. So I'll share a story that my brother told me about his public speaking experience. Now my brother, you have to know, is pretty outgoing, and he's a storyteller. Like, he's quite flamboyant. He's a Leo in the horoscope thing. And so he's right out there the most part. Well, he was on this circuit to in the oil patch to raise funds. And so they would go from place to place and pitch their whole project and talk about why it was good and so on. So he goes to someone and said, can you give me some tips on public speaking? And of course, he has a pretty solid ego. And so he's thinking, I can ace this, no problem. I'll just get right up there. So somebody told him, well, you know, your mouth is probably going to feel a little bit dry, so make sure you take up a glass of water with you. So he does that. So he walks up to the podium, but he's, contrary to how he felt he would be, he was just vibrating. His whole body was just kind of in shock from being afraid of what he was doing. And anyway, he sets the glass down on the podium. Now, he had one of those podiums that, you know, you've probably seen them. There's sort of a wooden podium, and they have sort of a beige mesh front to them. And the glass was tucked in on the shelf just underneath the podium. Well, he was vibrating so much, his knee bumps the podium, knocks the glass of water, and the water is leaking out from the front of the podium. Well, he shortened whatever he was going to say, and he got out of there and he said, I hope I never go back to that town in my whole life. Like, he was so embarrassed. And I'm thinking, well, that story just about takes the cake. That one was just so hilarious. And he lived through it, you know, and of course now it makes for a great story. So all the things that don't work for us can become material for later on. You know, they're part of a blog, or they're part of an article, or you can really resonate with someone else. So while we want to take the delivery of our message somewhat seriously, we don't want to take ourselves too seriously. We just want to be as compassionate as we possibly can and say, you know what, I'll do the best I can, and then just carry on. So so that's the whole thing about fear, is that we want to put it into perspective. And it does take some courage to put ourselves out there. There's no question. But the more you do it and the more you practice, the better you get at it. So let's do a little exercise. So one of the exercises I like to give for working with fear is actually a breathing exercise. And because when I came across this particular exercise and tried it, it can be useful as an ongoing exercise just to calm yourself down. It also works in an emergency. So if, for example, if you're waiting to be called to the front, let's say you're at a conference, for example, and your spot is next, and the organizer is introducing you, and that's maybe like, say 45 seconds that they take to introduce you, you can do something called a breathing triangle that will immediately start to calm you down. So if you picture in your mind an inverted pyramid, an upside down pyramid with the point going to the bottom, and if you were to go up for me, it's my left side of the pyramid. So you inhale so I'm going to demonstrate this how it works. And then I'm going to have you do one of these with me. We'll do a little cycle so that you get the practice of how it works. So you breathe into a quick count of 10. So that's about 5 seconds up the left side, my left side of the pyramid. And then across the flat surface at the top, you hold for another quick 10 count, and then you exhale to the count of 10 at the bottom, and you end up back at the bottom. And you do that 3 times. Well, if it's 5 seconds, 5, 5, that's 15 seconds. You do it 3 times round. By the time you've done 45 seconds of calming breath, your body has started to calm down, your mind has started to calm down, and you're able to focus. So one of the first times I used this, I was actually doing a team development talk to a group of Toastmasters. Well, I had never been part of Toastmasters, but I knew that they were very conscientious about timing and word whiskers and all these different things that you're not supposed to do in front of an audience. And so I was on such high alert, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I haven't even had their formal training, and what if I mess this up? And I'm just kind of vibrating. So I did this breathing triangle while I was being introduced, and it just calmed me right down, and away I went. So think of it as, when we're in the fear mode, it's all energy, right? So, but it's scattered energy. It's energy that's all over the place. And in fact, lots of times it focuses into wanting to bolt for the door, right? But all you're doing when you're breathing is you're sending the signals to your body and your brain to just calm down and focus, and then you can move forward. So let's just try this now. So just kind of get comfy in your chair, and I'll count you through it here. Now, if the 10 count is too far for you, then just go over to the hold your breath and then exhale. But so we'll do 3 of these. We'll go around and do the 45 seconds. All right. So inhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hold 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hold 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hold 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, and then just breathe normally. So that little exercise can save your butt when you're feeling and it doesn't matter whether you have to meet the teacher because your kid's acting out at school, or whether you're going to a really important meeting, you're pitching a book project, you're about to do a podcast interview. It doesn't matter. You do that breathing triangle and it will just start to calm you down and focus you. So, and now the other thing I'll say about that is, when we're fearful like that, we're me focused. So one of the most important shifts to make in your head, and this helps you with the fear, helps you move past the fear, is how am I here to serve my audience? Like, what is it I most want them to get from this? And the second that you switch that focus, it's so fascinating how then you calm right down. And here's the thing. If you can last 30 seconds into your talk, then you're into your material and fear disappears. So that's all you have to do is get past that first 30 seconds and then you're good, because you're focused on, well, this is what I came here to talk about, to share, to let people know about. And the minute you focus on the audience themselves, what are they here to get? So sometimes, not sometimes, all the time now, when I'm about to participate in some kind of an event where I'm there sharing my thoughts, my prayer is always, okay, God, I don't exactly know what these people need, but you do. So help me be the vessel that delivers the message that these people need to hear. Help me do that. I'm open to whatever flows through me. And that's such a comfort, because I mean, you can do all the research about your audience and so on and still be off the mark, because sometimes I've been talking to the organizers, and of course the organizers want a specific thing. That is not what the audience was expecting at all. And you go, so whoops, I hit my forehead and just shut off my video. So there you go. I didn't know it would do that. All right. We have to have a little comic relief here now. So just keep that in mind, that you have, you know, God and the universe have your back, and you're meant to share. You know, we're communicating creatures who are meant to let our light shine so that others can get what they need from that. You know, just as you've been around other people and in their light, and they go, and you go, oh wow, I really needed that. Well, it's meant to go both ways. So and of course I always find when I get working with a group of people, I always feel I get more out of it than I ever give to them, and which is kind of a cool feeling actually. And so it's just you're meant to do this, and it's just your choice on how and when and how big an audience. So let me ask you the next question here. When we're thinking of comfort level, so imagine an audience in front of you, and start thinking about the size. So where are you most comfortable on a scale of 1 to 10? What size audience is that? So if you think of you know, 2 or 3 people, or 10 people, or 50, or 100, or 1,000, where's your starting point that you say, oh, 10 out of 10, I'm really comfortable with this size? So what size are we talking about here for each of you?
Well, the biggest crowd I ever was in front was when I was part of our high school choir, and in grade 12, and I was a soloist, and we performed at the Spokane World's Fair.
Wow.
1974, and there were thousands of people out there.
Sure.
That was quite the audience to be in front of. Being a drama major, having done performances, I mean, I thrive on it. So I can take different crowds, but let's just say the bigger the crowd, the more nervous I get.
Okay, fair enough. Perfect. All right. Okay, who else?
For me, it's not so much the size of the crowd, it's when there's men there, and I don't know why that is. I can talk to
Oh,
women much easier than I can a mixed office, and I think that's just because I feel like my messages are more for women. But I'm speaking at church tomorrow, so I got to get over that.
oh, isn't that interesting? So you may want to, Mary, think about that a little more in terms of, so aside from, okay, my message is for women, why do you think men are more difficult for you?
I really don't know. I wish I could figure that out.
Yeah.
But whenever I'm called to do a church service, I will do them. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm always more nervous, and I have kind of come to the conclusion it's more that there are men there because I've never been at a very large church. I
Sure.
would say the most is maybe 75 to 100, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
All right.
I don't.
So yeah, interesting. Well, let me give you a little example of what can stop people that is seated way back somewhere in a little history piece of us. So I was working with a young man who was a very outgoing, well-spoken young man who was terrified of getting up in front of a group to the point where it was affecting his career because he had partners who wanted him to promote whatever it was that they were selling. And they said, you have to be our spokesperson. He tried every way he possibly could to get out of it. And he did for a while. And finally they said, no, you have to do this. So he was referred to me. And so I was just, and we were working one-on-one, and excuse me, I was just saying to him, okay, I just want you to stand up. And we're working in my living room, right? And I said, I just want you to stand up there and just start talking, because I wanted to get a sense of, how he organized his thoughts and so on. And I said, you can tell me anything you want. You can talk about the weather or somebody you saw yesterday. I said, it doesn't matter. I don't care what you talk about. And he's standing there, and there's silence, and there's silence, and there's silence. And I'm going, whoa. And he couldn't say anything, literally couldn't say anything. And so then we explored it a little bit more. And I had him, we did a little kind of a meditative thing where he just kind of got quiet in his mind, and out of his past comes this little story. And he said, when I was about 8 years old, my dad was in the garage fixing something. And so I went out and I said, well, Daddy, can I help you fix that? And his dad just said, well, no, not really, son. You just stay over there. I don't think you can do it right. And when he tapped into that, and he said, I realized that I'm afraid to speak because it's not gonna come out perfectly. And so sometimes when we're learning to get our voice out there, we tap into areas that, and it could be just the simplest thing that we took in as a little person or a young person that we never imagined was still seating there and stops us. So explore that for yourself, Mary, if it feels right, and just say, okay, well, why men? Is it because they're, we've kind of grown up with the patriarchal society, and what would a woman have to say that because she's a woman, I mean, we have some of those gender things going on sometimes, and you might come to find that men are far more responsive than you ever imagined, and they need the same ideas that women do in their own way. So I really encourage you to kind of take a look at that at some point and say, okay, be curious about it. Well, why is that? And see if something floats up from somewhere in the past, something somebody said or whatever. Because whenever I've tapped into that, for me, it was so interesting. Like I purposely did not speak much until I was spoken to when I was very young, because I there was an incident out of my past where I didn't feel safe to speak out. And so I kind of stuffed myself in this little box. Well, you listen to me now, I don't seem to have a problem talking, right? Well, but I worked on it and I realized, oh, okay. And so for lots of years, I was very selective in who I talked to because, you know, somebody might criticize me or it might not be safe. And when I worked through that, it made a huge difference in my comfort level, you know, and that's what it's all about, because the more comfortable you begin to feel in front of an audience, the one of the maxims is, well, some will love us, some will hate us, so what, next? You know, so we're not going to please everybody. And I think even the Dalai Lama said one time, he said, you know, he said, this one person really was criticizing me and I was feeling kind of bad. But then I thought about all the other people that loved me and I realized it's okay. He didn't have to like me. So there we go.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, so anybody else have any thoughts on comfort level, like when you expand, you know? And personally, I think the largest group I've been in front of has maybe been somewhere between 300 and 500. And I was good with that. The thought of being in front of 1,000 or 2,000 or 10,000, well, I confess that's a little daunting. And so I'm looking forward to that hurdle, working through that.
So I was just going to comment. I've been kind of quiet
Please.
here.
Sure. Oh, good.
Coming into this, the flip side around. So my whole life is not a whole life, but the last 10 years I've been doing public speaking, and now I'm trying to come around and write more. So I'm coming from a different angle here, if this
Sure.
makes sense. So I started out, you know, and have gone through those hurdles and struggles in the early days of sharing a really painful story.
Sure.
And so when you say that, it's interesting because my first mentor said, you know, you'll find it's easier to speak to larger groups than small groups. And I thought he was maybe nuts, right, at the time. But as time has gone on, it's way easier for me to look out over a sea. I speak a lot to the military. So to look out over a sea of green, you know, with people in their camo and, you know, 1,000, 2,000, whatever. And then when I'm in a small room with a group of like maybe 5, I find that more difficult because you're really intense one-on-one
Yeah,
point. So it's
absolutely.
I'm just coming from a different side of things. So
Oh, for sure. Well, thank you for sharing that, because that's so valid, because there's no question that when you're more intimate in a smaller circle, then you are way more visible. And so here's my thing. When you're vocal, you're visible. When you're visible, you're vulnerable. And being vulnerable is where the power is.
right.
We don't often realize that, but that's where the power is. So yes. Well, thank you. Oh, Beverly, I'm so glad you shared that, because that is the flip side is also true, that sometimes when I talk with actors, they do not want to stand up and speak in public. And I'm saying, well, excuse me, you're in front of an audience all the time. Yeah, but I'm playing someone else. So for me to stand up and be myself in front of a big audience, for them was more daunting than just playing a role. Whereas for me, the couple of times that I've tried acting as an older adult, memorizing those lines, that was the hardest part for me. And then remembering them, and then, oh no, I'm going to forget my lines here. Excellent. So I think it's very much a growth thing with your comfort level. So wherever you're at, and for you, Beverly, there's that opportunity now to say, okay, what's it like then to be one-on-one or one-on-2, one-on-3, and you know, how do I establish my own level of comfort in that scenario? Because then it opens it up for a different kind of sharing, right? So something quite different than to a big group, for sure.
Right. And I think I wonder when you said that to me, what, kind of triggered in my head was maybe that's why I have such a hard time trying to write this and put it on paper, because maybe for me it's like I'm writing it's just I'm writing one-to-one here almost in my head.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Writing, and it's like there's not an audience out here, and I'm writing, and really you're like, and when you said that, when to I can't remember the lady, she's in the middle of my screen that's speaking at the church tomorrow, when she was talking, you know, about the men. I think that the judgmental, yeah, the perfection. I think I'm a perfectionist in a way, and I'm always afraid it's not going to be perfect enough. You know, it's not going to be good enough to be out there. So I love how you said, because I do this too, that I always say, I am the vessel, Holy Spirit, that you are speaking the message to. And I remember I would critique myself so bad afterward. Then at some point I finally had to say, hey, wait a minute. Did you ask God to help you? Yes, I did. Well, then doggone it. Why are you back and saying, well, maybe I didn't do it right when you just gave him the power to speak through you, but you want to take it back. So that's when I kind of came over that hurdle. If that helps you any, you know, when you go into tomorrow, you know what? Everybody puts their pants on the same way, and everybody, yeah. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hijack
Absolutely. No. And that's perfect, because you're absolutely right. Our inner critic can take a strip off of us so quickly. And I can think of many times in my life where something just kind of burst out of my mouth when I wasn't planning to say anything. And either it would be really hilarious to everybody there, or they said good point or whatever. And inside I'm going, why did you say that? Oh, you were supposed to be quiet. What's wrong with you? And don't you do that again. And you go, oh, wow. And so you're right. When we ask for help and then still get in our own way, oh my goodness, then it's time to say, all right, let's move forward with that. And yeah, so excellent point. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Something?
Yes.
I was just thinking, because my public speaking experience is more in the counseling range, because my actual profession is a social worker. So
sure,
we often have to, speak, analyze, think, react, engage, and whatnot. And I think what I've learned is that when you're talking about big groups or small groups where you feel more comfortable, what I like is to be in a smaller space where I can get the immediate feedback from people in their body language and their eye contact, and sure, because then I can address it directly if I feel like I'm losing them, or if they're, and so that kind of interactive, personal, smaller environment works really, really well. Whereas when I'm in a bigger environment, I'm very conscious of the fact that I can see people moving and responding, but I can't address each one individually. So that kind of gets me like, oh my gosh, am I missing it? And at a certain point, I just have to go, look, just finish your thing, do the best you can, and finish. So there's that battle in my head to, prioritize the fact that I'm here to present, I'm here to express my message and do the best that I can, and hopefully I'll succeed in that. But yeah, so there's just the awareness of the two different environments and how they affect me differently.
Oh, they really are. And there's no question that the gifts that come from smaller groups, like a workshop setting or a small sharing group, as opposed to a large audience, is very different. I think I tended to hang out in workshop arenas more so throughout my life, because I felt I could see that I was beginning to make a difference, with it, and we could dialogue and we could have interchange there, and it was more meaningful to me. Whereas in a large audience, you get that surge of endorphins when you feel like, okay, I've got the audience, and they seem to get it and they're applauding and so on. But it's short-lived, because you walk off the stage and think, well, did I really do any good? So there's the thing, is we just, there are two very different kinds of experiences, and we just take what we get from each one and move forward. I still probably from a preference standpoint, I still like working with smaller groups better, just because of that personal connection, and I feel as if I'm getting to know people, and you know, and then there's often an opportunity for them to share some stories. Well, I love stories. So especially other people's stories. I'm kind of bored with my own now, so I've been around them so long. So then when somebody else tells me a story, so and that's actually a cool segue into when we think about content for audiences. So I was thinking about podcasts and the opportunity there is for each of us to get out there and share our message when we can't do it face to face as well for the time being. Then there are some very interesting podcast hosts out there who always need people to talk to. Otherwise, they don't have a podcast. So the beauty of that, so I was thinking, okay, so you have a book to promote and you want to get the word out about that. So how do you handle the whole podcast arena? Now, what I've discovered is that not all podcasts are created equal. There are some hosts who are not that skilled in either interviewing people or who, you know, they're just learning, like we all start somewhere. And so they're learning. And then there are some who are extremely professional that just make your life so easy. But probably the abiding theme of podcasts is they want their audience engaged. So if they invite you on, they want you to have a good time, they want to have a good time, and they want their audience to have a good time. Well, how do audiences have the best time? By listening to your stories. So if they've tuned in, they want to know you. They want to hear about you. And so have you ever noticed that the second somebody says, well, let me tell you a story about that, it's almost like people's ears literally perk up and they go, oh, a story. Okay. And so they listen more intently. So when you think of being a podcast guest, I think that's one of the critical pieces, is that you share you. You share the stories that brought you here. You share the stories that led you to write what you're writing. Whatever seems to be the theme of what you're talking about, share you. And they don't need to be long stories. They can, so when I'm on a 1 hour podcast like that, where I know there's a variety of questions they want me to answer, I do my best to keep my story short. So my formula is the typical 3 parts of any, it could be any book or any talk or any piece you're writing. Scintillating starts, I call them. So something to capture the audience's attention. So there's your hook, right? They read that first paragraph, or they listen to the first opening part of that, and they're hooked. They want more. So you start strong with what I call scintillating starts. And then as you develop the story, you move to what I call unmuddled middles. So there's lots of different pathways that the story can go, but you don't want your audience getting lost. So somehow there need to be guideposts along the way to help the audience keep with you, so they don't wander off, because our minds can think way faster than somebody else can talk. So maybe while you're talking, they're thinking about, oh, am I going to have peas or carrots for supper tonight? And oh, wait a minute, I was supposed to be listening to the talk. So whatever you can do to bring them back. Okay, point number 2 is, and so there's lots of signposts and guideposts that can help them stay with you and keep you on track. And when I use the counting method, I say, okay, I've got 3 things I want to talk to you about today. And I say, okay, number 1, number 2. Well, if I miss, so if I have a longer list, let's say I have 6 and I miss number 4, somebody will pipe up and say, oh, but what was number 4? So you know they're listening then when they catch you up. Oh yeah, right. Sorry. Okay, let's go back to number 4. So any way you can give them a clear path to what it is you're trying to say, that really helps. And then of course the last part is I call them enthusiastic endings. So you want to start with so here's my analogy. If you think of a fireworks display, what is it that gets the audience's attention? Yeah.
The end.
No, right. So if you're first starting though, like everybody's waiting, we know the fireworks are about to start. So how does the audience know that the fireworks have begun?
When they start.
Yeah, so there's the first big bang, right? And you go, oh, look at that. And so now you're paying attention, right? Well, at the end, so how do you know then that the fireworks is about to finish?
The grand finale.
The grand finale, absolutely. So there's this all over the place and you go, oh, the fireworks are going to finish now. And you're all sad, but you know it's coming to an end. Well, the same thing. So I suggest you end with a sizzle, not a fizzle. And I've seen far too many speakers who young, and usually they're not so much young, but they're new to speaking, is they don't know how to end it. So they say, okay, that's all I have to say. And they walk off and you go, what? oh, they're done. Oh, so it's always a good idea to give people a clue that you're about to finish. Whether, okay, let me just a quick summary of the 5 points that we talked about, bing, bing, bing. And then you want to leave your audience with some kind of an upbeat, whether it's a definite call to action, whether it's something inspirational for them to chew on after you're done, whatever it is, I recommend leaving your audience on a high. Even if you're talking about the challenges of poverty or homelessness or some of these really heavy topics, it's still, they want some hope. They want to know that either there's a way for them to make a difference personally or that all is not lost. And speakers who fail to do that don't really serve their audience that well. So I really recommend that you finish on a really strong, positive note. You know, even though we're faced with all these challenges, there's evidence that people are coming together and finding solutions to this. So it leaves them a little more uplifted. So the other thing with podcast interviews that I wanted to mention was it's really good for you to write your own list of questions in advance and practice them. So if somebody, and maybe you can find a buddy to practice with and say, okay, you be the podcast host and ask me these questions. I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes somebody will ask me a question and I'm kind of going, I don't actually know the answer to that. And so then I ramble on for a while until I come to an answer. Well, I don't have the luxury of that in a podcast interview. I want to be able to get to the point. So, and podcast hosts will really appreciate the fact that if you send them so here's a list of questions that people often ask me. You could send them the list. And that helps them out enormously. They may only use 1 or 2 of them, but at least it gives the theme for the interview. And particularly if your interviewer doesn't have a big audience and is maybe not that skilled yet at doing podcasts, they're fairly new to the whole process, then help them out by giving them as much as you can. You know, have your profile picture ready to send them right away. One podcaster that I was on this lovely show, a fellow out of New Zealand by the name of Stefan Neff does a podcast, and his theme is living a life of sobriety. So he's a recovered alcoholic, and he wants to spread the word of how wonderful life can be beyond alcohol abuse. And so he sent me, okay, what's your title, and make sure it's catchy, because that's part of the marketing piece, you know, so this is all the same thing that we do for books, right? So then, and what are your 3 talking points, and what's your theme, you know, what do you want to talk about? And then, of course, a little bit about your book, and if you have a book already, and you want to share the title, and maybe the book synopsis or something like that. Anything you can give them to help them make you look good. Yes, we're good. And then it's just to relax into the conversation and have fun. You know, allow the podcaster to lead you. And it doesn't mean that you can't interject something and kind of steer in a slightly different direction, because you can. But just have fun with it, and just enjoy the experience as much as possible. And that will serve you really, really well. So we've talked about the importance of you speaking up, and I congratulate all of you for speaking up and speaking out. Let's face it, we cannot change our world by being silent. And we're kind of in a mess right now in the world. We're in so many different scenarios that are not serving us that well, and that need transforming, well, one at a time, in our own special way. We can do that. And so I really want to encourage you to just open up to the possibilities of communicating and connecting with people in different ways. So some of you may know that with my app, The Magnificence Mentor, I do a little feature every Friday called Frivolicious Friday. So this was a made up word. So it's a combination of frivolity and delicious. So I just decided one day to have fun, and I took out my phone, put it on the video thing, just found the best lighting I could wherever I was, and just started talking about Frivolicious Friday. And I pick a little theme, and it was mostly, well, it's rarely scripted. It's pretty much off the cuff, and if I didn't like what I said, then I would do it over again. So, but it gave me some practice being on video, so that it didn't seem like such a daunting task. I got used to seeing my face. I got used to hearing my voice, and was okay with all of that. Well, it's great practice because I didn't want it to be more than 2 minutes. Well, you can say a lot in 2 minutes if you're really organized with your thought process. So it's really helped me to think on my feet and respond in a quicker way about a topic. So that's another way that you can kind of work through it. So Diane, I'm totally lost with my timing and where we're at. And so I'm going to stop talking and ask you, where are we now?
Your timing is spot on. And I want to thank you, my Lord, the information is just, I've got a ton of notes, but I want to share something with you, because it just struck me so strongly. And that was the comment you made about being vocal, being visible, and being vulnerable, that one leads to the other. And I would just add that vulnerability, as you said, and I just really want to emphasize this, that vulnerability is what gives you power. That's when people realize that you are genuine, that you really, the story that you're sharing or the message that you've been given to share reaches and touches their hearts.
Yeah.
And as messengers, that's the most powerful effect that we can bring to the world. And I really, that struck me so strongly when you said that. I'm going to steal it from you.
Of course, spread the word by all means.
Because that vulnerability piece, oftentimes, and I know for me, my personal story is I didn't want to be vulnerable. I had been hurt so much that, that I had this huge shield, and it's taken me quite some time to allow people to see the real me, because every time I would get on stage, and I've done a lot of public speaking over the term of my life because I needed to. I was in sales and marketing. But I would get on stage and my professional persona would step forward, and people who knew me knew that person that was presenting was that professional, not me.
Yeah.
And it's taken me quite some time to allow my real vulnerability, my real persona, my real me to be on that stage and be vulnerable. And I have found that since I have been able to do that, that it has changed how people react, respond, and move forward. So I just so much appreciated that piece of your sharing. And one thing I realized we didn't do today is open with prayer. And we have always opened with prayer. And so when you made that statement about asking God for his guidance and allowing him to share, to give us his message and speak through us, that's the other really powerful thing I have found helps me when I'm ready to share a message. Is I always try to remember to ask him to guide my words, and in that vulnerable spot. So bless you. What a gift. What a wonderful gift. I'm so glad that you joined us.
This has just been such a privilege for me. I have such fun working with, and I have to say, I love working with men, but even more, I love working with women. So
awesome. Well, and you need to know Beverly Shoemaker, who is here, is a host of a podcast, and her message is extremely powerful. Bev, unmute yourself and share a little bit with Sue about your message, because I believe that the two of you should connect.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to share. Started it in COVID because of all the public speaking, opportunities shut down, and God has given me a message. And when you say vulnerability, boy, have I had to walk into the vulnerability. But in my messaging, well, I don't know that I shared this here before. Did I, Diane?
You haven't shared it here, I don't think.
Okay. All right. I wanted to make sure because I don't like to be redundant. But in 2004, my youngest son was killed by a drunk driver. And then after struggling to pull my life back together and even find a way to get out of bed and move forward, 3 years after that fact, my husband chose to end his life via suicide. So that threw me way in the pit. But, I had divine appointments by God. God put me in front of a pretty well-known evangelist who ended up being a mentor for me. And, God sent me basically into the military realm, because we know that suicide, we hear 22 a day. with the military, but this has been, you know, it's been almost 10 years maybe that I've been speaking to the military. And so, you know, sharing that story, but also the flip side of things that, you know, there's a lot of drinking in there, a lot of drinking and driving. But I also have a son that's a special forces soldier. He's a Green Beret, and he's deployed 13 times with 6 of those combat tours. So I had an instant connection. So my hook when I walk in, you know, I can walk in and right in the beginning, and as soon as I can connect with them as a military mother, boom, you know what, I have them, because there's always the mom, you know. So I have shared the story of navigating through that, walking through that, you know, how I got through to the other side. And it was not an easy journey. It was a long, hard journey, to say the least. But so now I did a podcast. I, you know, kind of shared my story. Like you said, you kind of get tired of sharing your own story after a while, but you know, I had to do that. I had to walk in there and say, I am doing this for them because I want to stop that guy or that woman that's just teetering on the edge of taking their life. Or I want my story to flash up in their face when they're out drinking and they say, oh, you know, I'm going to get in that car. Whoa, wait a minute. I want my face to flash up in them so that they go, you know what? I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that person that delivers, you know, such a tragic lifestyle to someone down the road. So that has been a lot of, you know, I have in schools, I've gone to schools, I've gone, you know, and I speak in churches a lot, because my huge heart is too, is I want people to know where I found my hope. You know, I found my hope in Jesus, and I want everybody else to know that too when they're going through hard times. So now with my podcast, it's called the Resilient Heart Podcast. And my heart is to bring other people on with their stories where they can step into that vulnerability and they can share their resiliency, because I want the world to know that you're not defined by what happened to you, and you can move through this and you can make a difference in the lives of others, whatever the arena of your pain is in. And when you said those 3, vocal, visible, vulnerable, you know, for me, I drew a heart, because when I talk to people, I will say about speaking, I will say, you have to have the pain points. The pain points are what touch the heart. And when you touch the heart, you got them, just like what you said. And when I've had people say, you know, you can make grown men cry, Bev. And we know our military, and I'm not bragging on me because it is all the Holy Spirit working through me, but we know our military can really, you know, they're taught to just, you know, show zero reaction. And when you can get the heart and get to the heart of someone like that, then and make a change and make a difference and serve them, you have done well, my good and faithful servant, I guess is the best thing for me to say. So was that too long of an explanation of my, thank you, Diane, for letting me share that. So now I'm kind of on the hunt for people that have those deep, vulnerable, painful stories and how they came back for them and they overcame and they have created purpose out of that pain. And, you know, that's kind of the whole thing, is to show people that, you know what, you can have purpose, because when we lose our purpose and we lose our hope, that's when we're walking into that darkness of, you know, I don't have a reason to be here. I don't have a life. What good am I to anybody else? Because, you know, my life feels meaningless to me. So I want the world to know that we all have a purpose, and I want them to hear other people's stories of what they've done with their painful adversities.
Thank you for sharing.
I'm going to try to send my nephew to you.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to try to get my nephew to call you. His story from drug addiction to Jesus is amazing.
Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. I appreciate it, because I'm at that point now where I'm starting to interview other people and different stories, there's so many different variables in pain in life. So.
Okay.
And so my problem is, and this is why I'm so grateful that Diane invited me in here, is people have been telling me I need to write a book. And I'm telling you, it is a brick wall for Bev. My mouth can go like this, but that pen just doesn't want to work.
That's all right. There are other ways to writing a book than just with a pen. So
Right.
we can talk about how all that fits and tying in the stories that your individual interviews will help as well. So we can talk about that. Sue, we didn't have a chance. The folks in this session are all from diversified backgrounds. We didn't have a chance really to share that with you, and I think we can take a moment and do some quick introductions so you know who you just impacted their lives.
Lovely.
And so if we can go around, Diane, would you like to start and just tell her a little bit about what you're doing with your editing in the magazine?
Trying to be succinct.
Yeah, I'll time it, 2 minutes.
Ay. Okay, well, real quick, I am focusing on a couple of different things. The first thing is editing and coaching. That's one of the things that I've been doing for the last 2 years, and I find is a privilege to be able to work with people to help massage their work and to help elevate. You know, when I get the piece, to try to elevate it to the point where it shines and to the point where the writer themselves feel like excited to put something out there that came from them. So that's kind of what I've been working on. Coaching as well, to help people who are kind of stuck, who have an idea, who don't really know how to get it to where it needs to be. Then I have my blog, and attached to the blog is the magazine, Lost Pen magazine, which we just released a couple of weeks ago, in which the story that Mary was talking about, her nephew, appears in that magazine. So, and it is quite an amazing story. So definitely, I hope you connect with each other. So the magazine is really a place. It has two functions. One is to make publishing art and literature accessible for writers, Christian writers of various levels of experience. And it's also to get the word of God out into the world to as many people as possible. And this group here is the other thing that I'm invested in as well, which is to regroup and support and equip Christian writers who have a message so that they can get their message out there in as very different ways as possible. Writing is one, but as we're talking about magazines, we're talking about podcasts, we're talking about public speaking, and so helping people to feel confident and to feel capable and competent in expressing the message that they have in their heart. So all of those things work together. And I'm happy to do it with Doyen. We have very similar ways of looking at things, our different expertises, but together the Lord has been pulling things along and weaving things along. So I'm just happy to be part of that process.
Thank you. Thank you. So Sheila, share what you do. I know Sue will be impressed. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sue, you are the bomb.com. I just want to say, because
Thanks.
that was phenomenal. There were so many things that I got out of that. And Diane had mentioned a lot of mediums that we could use to get the messages out. And one medium that she forgot to mention that we have is television. And that's another medium that we have, is getting our messages out there. It's so amazing. This group is so amazing. There's so many things that you said as far as visibility and vulnerability and vocalness and all of that. And I just think about George Eliot, who said, you can always become the man or the woman that you could have been, that you should have been. And as you were talking, it just brought so much to my heart, the message and things like that. And because I thought about my own journey, you know, and things like that, and so many things that have happened, but I'm where I am today because of God and being a heart-centered messenger that Doyen helped me to coin and understand that's what I am. That's where I belong. Because I had no idea. I was just kind of wandering as an alien looking for my planet, my place. And so I kind of landed here. And it's so exciting because just realizing the things that we could do and the things that have touched my life. And this is one of the groups that has touched my life. And so being blessed to be able to be in an arena to help God-centered messengers get their messages out there to the masses through television, films, and things like that is so exciting because I love doing what I'm doing. And we also work with animation as well. And so I'm thinking, Sue, if you were an animated character doing this, it would be just crazy. It would be crazy reaching the children and helping them to understand their purpose, their passion, their pain points, because they have those messages as well. So it's really exciting. I'm just really in a happy place and understanding that this is a tribe that I'm so blessed to be a part of. And having speakers like you come along and just kind of synergize us. You know, this is a time where we don't have to retire, we can refire. And that's
Absolutely.
what you did through this conversation. You just refired some things in me. And I'm like, okay, now, Lord, where do we go now? What do we do the rest of the day here?
Nice.
So thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Sheila. And Mary, share a little bit about yourself and your books and your messaging.
Well, I'm a farm wife, as Diane knows, Doyen. I started with a dream to be a speaker, which never really took off. I mean, just local churches was my goal. So I started writing, and now it's flipping back to local churches calling me. So it's gone full circle in the long run. But I have worked with Sue before, and she helped me because I had to put together some what do you call them, for some courses for the app. And so Sue helped me get past that fear of talking to the camera, because unlike you, Beverly, I want to connect with the audience. And so for me to just talk to a camera was really difficult because I wanted to see their eyes and know if I had them captivated. And when I'm just talking to a camera, I was so lost. But so that's where I am at. I have 2 devotional books written. The third one, 2021, right, Diane?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Tell me yes, I have to.
Yes.
You have
I
to.
have 2 Bible studies written and hopefully a third one of those next year as well. So that
And
is my primary
journals.
goal.
She has journals as well.
Matching journals. Yes, I have matching journals as well. Yeah, you really helped me today with, the last couple weeks have helped me, the hook and winding up. And I just yesterday read the talk to my husband, and I can't get through the last 2 sentences without crying. And I was worried about that. And he said, no, cry. So hopefully that is not leaving them on a bad note, but through this talk, and it's about legacy, and it all stemmed from a devotion. That's where I usually start. My brother-in-law just passed away recently, very unexpected, and it's not all about him. It's not that, but it made me realize what legacy am I leaving behind. And yes, I'm leaving my books, and my grandchildren, when they get a little older, will know the lives. And Gemini's book lives are an open book because I write about anything from him's crazy ride up the mountain to farming accidents or whatever. So
To a dirty truck.
Oh yeah, dirty truck, bird poop. But you also said something about your unique voice, and that has been resonating in me for the last month, that people have said to me, nobody else does what I do. So whoever said that, that was just, I needed to hear that again today to drive that point home. That nobody writes like I do. Nobody tells the stories like I do. It might be the same old story from drug addiction to Jesus, but nobody writes it like I do. So, and reaches the people I reach. Everybody reaches somebody different. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Cool.
Yay. Yay. And Marie, I know you talked a little bit about it. Now I'm going to hold you to a short time frame here. So be succinct.
Is that one of the main qualities of a good speaker?
Yes.
I'm one of two Canadians. I with Diane. I'm on the great Canadian prairies. I have been pretty much a writer all my life, but now that I'm a retired teacher, I've have more of a chance and more incentive to write. So I have one novel to my name that I'm trying to get published and maybe turn it into a trilogy. I love historical fiction. So I'm looking at writing that kind of thing too. I'm driven to write hard-hitting. I'm questioning things about society. Some of my topics are controversial, but I feel that the Lord is sending me to deliver a message, a gospel message to the world. And I was one of those unbelievers who came to know the Lord in my late 20s. So a lot of not very nice background behind me either. So and as I said before, I'm interested in writing some children's stories because I'm writing for my grandchildren too.
Nice.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Well, and unfortunately, Laura had to leave, and she has a very strong Christian principled heart. And I'm sad that she had to leave, because I know that you'd appreciate getting to know her as well, Sue.
Thank you.
Well, with that, do any of you have any other questions or comments for Sue? Feedback? Well, if not, Marie?
What is the name? I'm very interested in your book. That was Magnificent.
Magnificent Misery, From Adversity to Ecstasy.
Okay, Misery.
And Sue, share your app as well.
Oh, okay. Why don't I just pop it into the chat so that
That's
people
grand.
can get the spelling. It's called I just took myself out of my own chat here. Hang on. Come on. There we go. It's called The Magnificence Mentor. I also put my email address in there. If anyone wants to reach out at any point, then you can connect with me.
And I would encourage you to connect with her. She's an amazing, giving, kind, loving woman.
Thank you. Isn't that what makes the world go around, right?
It is. Thank you so much for your time and your content. It was just awesome. Beverly, can I impose upon you to close us in prayer?
Oh, absolutely, I'd be honored. Thank you. And I just want to say again, thank you for bringing this today, because like I just put in the chat, we can never stop learning, you know?
Yes, that's true.
That's right.
And I always like to garner new things, and I appreciate it. So thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Father, we come before you today and we thank you and we praise you. We thank you that you loved us so much, that you gave us each our own life, our own story, our own gospel to take to the world. God, I ask for you to just empower each and every one of these ladies today. Bless them abundantly in what it is you have called us to do uniquely. As we heard today, we have our own unique way because you created us in our own unique way. And God, I just praise you for the blessings. I praise you for the goodness. And I just ask that you drop creativity drop creativity into each and every one of us today, God, with new ideas. Even though, like Sue said, there's nothing new under the sun, there's still new ideas that need to come in to bring forth that. So we just praise you. We thank you. We thank you for these wonderful ladies for taking the time to pour into us today. And may we go out and touch at least one individual today in some small way. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Well, thank you. Thank you all for your time and inspiration. It's been awesome. So we're done. Sue, may I ask that you stay on for just
Absolutely.
a moment?
Sure.
And thank you, Diane. I love what we're doing here, and I so much appreciate your support. Sue, Diane, and Laura and I are kind of, I guess, the movers behind this, and we're really looking forward to more. And so we'd love to have you join us again. We're meeting the first and third Saturdays every month. And we would love if you would join us. Your input is valuable. And of course, we try to bring new ideas, new assistance to those who know they have a message. And so that's our purpose, is really to support and give a foundation so that individuals feel that there's a community they can come to. We're more of a family, I believe, than an unassociated group. So we invite you to come back and join us. So with that, unless someone has something that's a burning desire to share something else, we are concluded.
Thank you.